Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to Every Lens Tells a Story, the technical and artistic process of cinematographers, presented by Panavision at the 2022 Members Lounge. My name is Gopala Monaco. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm a membership assistant at the Canadian Academy. Welcome. Members Lounge 2022 is presented by the Canadian Media Producers Association, which represents hundreds of Canadian independent producers. They are the people who make the shows and movies that you love. Members Lounge 2022 is also made possible with the support of our programming partners, Directors Guild of Canada in Ontario, William F. White International, Bell Fund, Le Fond Spell, Boat Rocker, NABET 700M Unifor, Telefilm Canada, Le Banque Nationale, Le Bureau de Cinéma et de la Télévision du Québec, the Independent Production Fund, Panavision, and La Sodec. If you have any questions for today's speakers, please put them in the Q&A and we will have some time for those at the end of the session. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panel. Ashley Iris Gill is a queer Toronto-based cinematographer for music videos, documentaries, and commercials. Some of the clients she's collaborated with have been Mercedes-Benz Canada, BMO, Absolute Vodka, Sprite in collaboration with the NBA, Rogers, Pet Value, and Nike. Her cinematography is often described as emotive, intimate, and vulnerable. Bobby Shore is a lauded director of photography who has worked on award-winning feature films, commercials, and music videos. Bobby has shot TV series for Netflix and Amazon, and most recently he shot Lenny Abrahamson's highly anticipated adaptation of Sally Rooney's novel, Conversations with Friends. Jordan Orman is a Canadian cinematographer whose work includes feature films, television, music videos, and commercials. From redefining icons to establishing benchmarks of new, his imagery is a tapestry crafted by connecting bold, broad strokes with the intricacies of culture, lifestyle, and authenticity. Unfortunately, Ella Cooper was no longer able to be with us here today, but sends her regrets. I will pass it off to our moderator for today's session, Louis Calabro, the Vice President of Programming and Awards here at the Academy. Thank you and welcome.
Hello, everyone. Great to see some amazing, talented people on these Zoom squares with me, which we were talking about earlier. Might be the last time we do a Zoom panel, with all of you folks, I hope. Next year, we're all meeting at a restaurant and we're going to have wine in front of us as we do this. So thank you for being here. I'm super excited to have all of you in this conversation, and we miss Ella, but I'll do my best here today. So for today's discussion, the way that I've sort of set things up is that, I want to talk a lot about collaboration because, as cinematographers, I think that's key to what we want the audience to walk away with in terms of how that works. A little bit about the craft itself and how you approach the craft. Maybe touch on the next generation and any notes for emerging filmmakers, and then the future for all of you and what's up next. So I want to quickly sort of start by saying that, I know a lot of your work. I have to say that, with Prism Prize, which I started about 10 years ago, my introduction to a lot of your work was through commercial music video. And so I love the idea of like thinking about that work, but also more of the narrative stuff too. So we can touch on that in a second, but I wanted to start by just maybe doing a little quick note about what drew you each into the visual storytelling world to kind of anchor us. What was your trajectory? And maybe we'll throw it over to Ashley first to start us off with that.
I guess what kind of got me into storytelling originally was like, I used to write as a kid, and I found myself a little bit frustrated that there was no way to bring my words to life and make everyone see the same thing that I was seeing, because we all kind of interpreted characters really different. So I think I just like picked up a camera and I was just like vlogging, doing little small things here and there. And then I was more focused on directing, to be completely honest, but yeah, I guess I was just directing and I just pivoted into cinematography because I cared more about like tech and shooting than I cared about dealing with actors and stuff. But yeah, I guess that's in short of it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, I like that. I like that idea about like bringing it to life and bringing words to life. Bobby, what about you?
I don't know. I feel like it's I just really liked watching movies when I was growing up and was just really drawn into, I guess, just kind of like the visual aesthetic aspect of the medium. And I just got lucky. I figured out really early on when I was like 17 that I wanted to be a DP, and was able to, through a lot of kind of just like good guidance and support from some, you know, good friends and folks that were older than me, kind of carve out a pretty clear pathway for how to get there. So yeah, it was basically just really just, you know, knowing it from a pretty young age. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, cool. Jordan?
I definitely would echo everything that Bobby and Ashley are sharing right now, because I started not in filmmaking. I started actually in business and marketing. And I was really good at networking, went to school for that, and thought I was going to have a career in business exclusively. And quickly realized that I was a tech as well as Ashley, that I was inspired by doing things that push the status quo and push the envelope socially. And, you know, because of that consistency, I started to realize that there was a career path outside of just taking photos at clubs or after parties or concert venues or little commercials for friends or upcoming businesses. And when I learned that cinematography was a career that could actually be sustained for years to come, I realized that the networking, the ability that I had very early in my life, it really paid off, because I reached out to mentors and I got advice, and slowly but surely I was a perfectionist and wanted my work to get much better. So, you know, evolution kind of persisted, and the gear that I was using turned into much more expensive gear, and slowly but surely, 10 years later, we're on the panel talking to you.
Amazing. Cool. I do want to talk about gear in a little bit, you know, just to kind of get into a little bit. I know that some of our attendees are interested in that for sure. But before that, I'm seeing consistencies for sure with in terms of like support and friends and mentors along the way. And we can touch on that too. But when it comes to collaborating with specifically with the director, I think I want to focus on that for a second. You know, what that looks like to each of you. And I ask this because, you know, obviously you're trying to communicate a visual strategy. And, you know, for instance, with you, Jordan, I know that you've worked with Kelly, Kelly Fife Marshall a couple times. And, you know, I guess the idea of a trusted collaborator, I've heard from artists like you all, you know, leads to better communication and you know, better final product. So maybe Jordan, you can start us off with that in terms of like, you know, multiple times working with somebody. You know, I know that I saw on IG that you were in Jamaica recently. So I don't know if you have an example or what, but yeah, why don't you take us through that?
Thank you for sharing that. I just got back from Jamaica 3 days ago. I shot Kelly's feature film debut project called When Morning Comes. And that to me was definitely an exposition of perfect collaboration, because leading up to that moment when Telefilm was able to support our vision, we started out with a $0 idea, like much of the projects that I've done with most of my collaborators. And it was just off the strength of an idea that we wanted to expose with our time, and which turned out to be Haven. It was a 2.5 minute short film that exposed a little girl and the truth and reality of being mature and maturing. And we saw the result of what that looked like with Trust. And then we backed that project up a year later with Black Bodies, which went on to Sundance and Cannes to do many great things. And that also was an exposition of just time. What happens when we're not working on commercial projects or long format projects, and just listening and really extracting the information that the directors really wanted to expose really helps and informs my work, because I'm a very intuitive filmmaker. I'm not what I consider to be a technical DP. I'm someone that wants to spend a lot more time talking about what is this meant to feel like, and then that can inform my work. And going into what we shot in Jamaica, the choices that we made going into that film based on our history together allowed her to trust me a lot more with my referencing, a lot more with my choices. In which I did something that we've never done. You know, we went to Jamaica, shot an entire movie on one lens, And it's the conversation extends past the collaboration because the trust was embedded over periods of time. There was many failures along the way, but I think the long period short, there was consistency along the way. There was a lot of open conversations. There was a lot of transparency on what she knew, what I didn't know, what we didn't know about each other. And there was trust. We developed what trust language looked like for us individually. And then that really started to inform our collaboration, as with many other jobs.
That makes a lot of sense. Ashley, would you say the same thing? I mean, especially coming from, doing some commercials along the road with your trajectory, where I know that the shoots are often really quick, and maybe I don't know if you're always introduced or even know the director in some cases. How has that collaboration worked with people you know, people you don't know? How do you approach that?
Well, I think with commercial, it's a little bit different than like narrative and other stuff, because typically you'll have like everything kind of boarded out. The idea you already know if you're trying to sell like a product or something, so there's less, I guess there's less emotional connection that's needed between the director and the DP. Like obviously you can still know them and you guys can still find ways that make it more your own. But I feel like with commercial, the relationship that I have with directors is definitely formed in like our pre-pro. Like we'll have meetings before, but if I don't get to have a meeting with the director, I typically will talk to them at the top of the day, figure out what they're thinking, how they like stuff. And I also try to move very quickly when I arrive to set, so that way I can show them something right away so that we can talk, because sometimes we don't have time to talk before. And when I work with directors that I've worked with before, I kind of already know what they like in their style through trial and error on things that we've done in the past. So I think I kind of lean into that, and I'll try to create something that I know that they'll like as a base, and then we kind of build off of that. But yeah, I think like to kind of go off like Jordan said, like trust is a big thing. And typically like directors choose their DPs because they trust their eye, they trust their vision, they trust like the type of stuff that they do. So I think, yeah, just leaning into that and just communicating a lot throughout the day. And yeah, pretty much it. Just good communication, I think.
Makes a lot of sense. And I guess that's where it sort of starts, right? When that choice is made right off the top in terms of who you work with, there is that sort of built-in trust sometimes. But I want to talk about TV for a second too, and maybe ask you, Bobby. I know we'll look at a clip from one of your shows in a second, and before we do that, why don't you tell us a little bit about navigating the setting? And feel free to jump in, guys. Don't have to wait for me either. But Bobby, for when you come to a television show, there's this, and often there will be an established look. I guess it's a little bit different for feature length, but there still would be a look. And how would you approach that if you haven't really been involved in establishing that look in the first place?
I mean, I guess it depends. I've only done that once. I worked on a TV show last year in Ireland where there was a lead DP and a kind of lead director who kind of crafted the look for the first, 5 episodes. And then myself and another director took over for the back 5. And yeah, that was the first time I'd done that before, but it was such a kind of special show, and it was just so simple. And the kind of lead team was just so collaborative that it felt very easy to kind of integrate ourselves into, I think, the style that they were, I think, hoping to achieve, and the look and the overall aesthetic and feeling that they were hoping to achieve, which I think is probably true of kind of most TV shows. I guess the one thing is, whether or not you're working with the same director for, all your episodes, or whether there's, rotating directors. I know Jordan probably went through that experience on The Porter with, one director doing a couple episodes, another director doing another couple. And, I think what Ashley was saying about communication becomes such an important facet of your job, especially when you're bouncing from one director to the next, trying to maintain a consistent look of like a show from episode to episode, but maybe working with personalities that aren't necessarily and shouldn't necessarily be the same as one another. So then you have to ask yourself a question as a DP: what can you do to kind of almost best, I don't want to say like I think there's this idea that in film, when you're kind of the head of the department, a lot of folks need to kind of adapt their working style to meet what yours is. And I really believe that as a kind of good leader on set, you should be 100% willing to adapt your working style to the folks you're working with, so that way you can get the best out of everyone. And so I think from a television standpoint, like, I think kind of letting go of ego a little bit and thinking that shows shouldn't, like, we don't do that this way in a show is maybe sometimes can be a little bit limiting, both for yourself and maybe for the directors you're working with. Jordan, I don't know if you want to hop in and talk about your experience on The Porter. I just feel like I just remember with the first time doing a big TV show with that Netflix remake of Anne of Green Gables, like feeling this like sense of defensiveness around directors that want to do something different, but then by the end being like, it's a different episode, it's a different show. Like, obviously, if it's not completely egregiously out of line with what we established, like, yeah, why don't we try it and see if it works, you know?
Yeah, I think to what you're saying, Bobby, I think the level of comfort that you have to feel with your collaborator before, and just touching on Philip's question, before, for me, going into The Porter, leading up to pre-production, what was exciting about getting the job was just getting the interview. Like, the process just to get into the room was just grueling, because I'd never had any TV experience going into The Porter. So everything was against me. The odds are against me entirely. So presenting the directors and the networks and the executive producers and all the key creatives with your vision, I think you have to learn how to really flesh out what's in your head in a very concise elevator pitch way, because there's nothing worse than going into a meeting and rambling on about the exact same idea that you're just willing to have in your head. Like, just get it out the way and then be confident about that choice. For me, a lot of my pre-production has to do with like reading the script for a read through, and then rereading the script for a technical breakdown, and making notes about what I think is going to be lighting requirements, camera requirements, and additional specialty equipment, and then rereading it, and then really visualizing the show, really visualize the tone, the pace, the mood, the setting, the type of equipment, and how I'm going to inform my work. And then I start thinking about my crew. What type of crew would I like to work with? What type of crew am I looking to hire? And how is that hiring process going to be? One thing about me, I don't like to work with friends very often outside of like my immediate friend group, because I feel like in the earlier stages of my career coming up, especially going into bigger opportunities, there was trust, but there wasn't experience where my current friend group was. So I really wanted to reach outside of my comfort zone so that I was able to grow. That's how I also established relationships with Bobby and the rest of the people at Hire, which we'll get into later. But I think it's very important to understand, leading up to where you're at, never be afraid to be wrong, be willing to ask the questions, and be willing to say what's on your mind with all due respect. I also DP and operate the camera, Philip. Now at this point, I would like to operate a lot more, but unfortunately I'm not able to due to 2 cameras or 3 cameras or 4 cameras, or depending on the units. But a lot of it comes down to budget, time, and what the director is looking for ultimately.
Makes a lot of sense. Let's take this chance, because we're talking a little bit about Porter, to look at some of your stunning work on this show.
Junior.
First thing, shoes in point, no scuffs, perfect polish. And when you walk like a man with answers, because whether or not you have them, that's who you have to be.
Zeke, you make sure that my husband stays out of trouble tonight?
Don't I always?
Do you know who I am?
I know you're in charge.
Of every unholy thing that sets foot in this city.
Queenie, the woman they call the Southside Butcher.
When I hear somebody trying to sell me on a better life, I gotta ask myself, what is so bad about the life they got?
If I wanted to get the Porters into a union, what's the first thing I should do?
Always go for the head.
That's where the vision is.
You think I need a partner?
I think you need a man that knows every vein in them trains.
I know y'all might be scared of what might happen if we do this, but maybe it's time we start thinking about what happens if we don't.
What I offer these boys is not one day, maybe. It is in their hands right now. But it's union shit you talking. Now that's danger. You sure you don't want to work with me?
You sure you don't want to join the movement?
I'm good. gotta spend the rest of my life bowing and smiling. People rather spit in my face than killing me would be a kindness.
Knowing when to be a bull-headed Negro motherfucker and when not to be.
I'm a poeta papsi, the most invisible man on the earth.
Absolutely stunning visuals there.
Thank you.
Now I can only imagine the prep. We talked a little bit about prep and being super organized, and I love the idea of the concise elevator pitch, and I think everyone watching who's going through this should understand that and make note of that. But speaking of prep, I know, and look, a lot of my references are going to be from Instagram, so sorry about that. But Ashley, I know that you posted some things about sketching out diagrams on like an iPad or having a really meticulous prep the night before with the different gear for a shoot or the week before or during. Just wondering how you sort of came to understand. Is that how you've always been, or like did you just come to understand that this has to be the way I am? I've got to be super organized. Like how is that approach in the pre-production stage?
I think, to be honest, I kind of adapted that habit within the last year. I probably should have done it much longer than that, to be completely honest. I would go into things not preparing in the ways that I should, but I guess even having conversations with Bobby and Jordan in the past about like prep, and they would like tell me like, make sure like you plan everything out, you have references, you kind of know what you're trying to achieve, because it's really hard to figure out things in the moment when you may not have the right tools if you don't prep. And I've just watched my work get a lot better when I do prep, because I can talk to my technicians about my ideas and actually visualize it with them and be like, hey, what do you think if we had a light over here or this over here and this over here? And we can kind of all have a discussion and make critical decisions in pre-production, so during the production, things can move smoothly. And yeah, I think honestly, since I've been doing a lot of pre-production in my iPad, diagrams, script breakdowns, notes with all my directors, I think I too am much more clear with what I want to do on the day. So I think it frees up my mind from like any stress of like, oh, where should things go? What lens should I do? Like I already kind of go into it knowing that, so I can actually have fun on set with the team, and I can just lean into like the story with that director and not think so technically, because I've done that in pre-pro. So yeah, I think it's super important. And I also think it helps the director trust you and your team trust you and your tech trust you, because like they know exactly what's going to happen going into things. And I think in the past, I've had situations where I didn't plan as well as I should have. And I think it also like burned me. Like I may have not had like the right lights or the right lens or the right gear to do a specific move that the director wanted. And that was just because I didn't plan very well.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything that...
Can I just hop in there for 1 second?
Yeah,
I mean, Ashley, it's like everything you said, I mean, makes so much sense, and I think speaks so much to how you will find your own version of what your prep is as you just develop as a cinematographer. And it's, I think everything you're saying about you wanting to be prepared on the day so that you just, you're going to have all your bases covered, but it does free you up to, I think, almost be able to have a little bit more freedom creatively, because I kind of find that the more you, especially when it comes to narrative, the more you prep something, the more you kind of commit what a scene is about from a kind of like subtext kind of perspective, from a kind of thematic perspective, and what you want to do to achieve the look and the feel of it. You could forget all that shit on the day and then still know exactly how you need to shoot the scene, because you've kind of just committed the kind of like the bones of it to memory,
100%, 100. And I guess to kind of go off what Bobby just said, I recently did a short with a director who like didn't really have a clear vision of like what they were thinking for a specific scene. So what I ended up doing was I created like a base look that I kind of knew would be the key elements that we needed. And then we just built off of that. So I made sure that I had additional like lights and grip stuff so that we can definitely push other things into the scene. But I had a base to kind of start with to at least get us in the right direction. And I would have never done that if I didn't like prep very well in the beginning.
Yeah. I think also, I mean, and this is just, I don't know, I guess it's like different folks work in different ways. I know Robbie Ryan refuses to tech scout and like doesn't want to plan or prep at all. He's one of my favorite DPs, but I think I'm much more in the same boat as like Ashley and Jordan, where I kind of feel like it's your responsibility on set as the DP to know the script almost better than the director, and to just know stuff so well and know it inside out that you just kind of have it committed to memory if you can. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, it depends on the amount of prep time you have and who you're working with and what your relationship is like with the director. But yeah, I don't know. I just think that doing as much homework as possible will only ever kind of serve you, you know? And I think Philip asked a question about shot listing. And I mean, I feel like that's kind of my favorite part of prep is just, you know, grilling the director with questions, especially if they've written the script as well, and asking them about, you know, who's driving the scene, and, you know, if we had to cover it in one shot, where's the right place to put the camera. Just if you ask the right questions, like one answer will actually tell you a million different things that make you capable of doing your job so much better, you know? So I think when it comes to that shot list question, Philip, like there's some directors I work with that don't really like to shot list. I'll type one up myself just so I have ideas to present them either on the day or in prep, you know? And it hasn't really, you know, fucked me over yet. So I feel like it's kind of working.
That's amazing.
Sorry to cut you off. But just to add to what you're saying about that shot listing thing, Bobby, one thing that I definitely learned, at least the biggest takeaway that I just had, the director came into a movie with a shot list. And what I did, and I made sure of, was through the blocking, just pinpoint all the opportunities to capture all of those shots.
Yeah.
That way, in one blocking, I know every setup that I need based on the time that we're already being allotted at the top of the scene. You know?
That's really interesting. Okay, I understand that. I love the idea of the concise, like the questions, like the answer leads to exactly knowing what you have to do. Like that's super smart, because usually you're thinking the other way around of like how to solve things on the answer side. Well, is there anything that, like, just for those who are thinking about like getting into this, is there anything that you can't live without, or you just couldn't do your job without on set? Like, and feel free to jump in, or on the flip side, if there's any new tech that you're excited about. And hoverboards are a good answer.
I think for me, moving forward, I'll never do a job without open walkie system, like a headset, like an open comm system to just have free flowing communication. I never want to yell on set ever. And I was in Jamaica for 30 days without walkies that worked. And I was constantly having to look for my gaffer. It was just so frustrating, because all it could have been was just like a heads up, which is like open comm walkie system. The director could just talk to us, fizzle in my ear if I needed a shot, versus them hovering over my shoulder. It just helps. Anything that can inform communication and allow that to be better, I'm 100% saying for.
It's a great one.
And an iPhone charger.
And I guess I already. Oh my gosh. Well, I think I kind of already touched on my answer. My iPad, like I always have it with me no matter what, just as a good like reference. And I think too, if I'm stuck dealing with like, not stuck, but if I'm talking to a director or someone else, I can even give my iPad to my technicians and they can start and stuff. So I think, yeah, my iPad is definitely like the thing I can't have, or I need to have on set.
Okay. Yeah, well, you know, let's look at another clip.
This fucking sucks.
Here. Want to split this with me?
I knew you were holding out. Where did you get that?
It's my mom's prescription.
Fuck. Yes. Are you sure you want to, man? I'm just looking out for you because when I was your age, I was smoking weed and that was it.
I want to.
Lick the lolly off and then chew. It's quicker, better, high.
Can I do it how you're doing it? The razor?
No. You don't catch a habit. And if you do, you stick with scripts as long as you can. And you do not binge use. It's the quickest way to OD. You understand?
So what's he want? The Polo Boy guy.
I told you not to snoop.
I know. I snooped.
Well, it's a great example though of you know the subject matter obviously and the tone and the feel matching.
Yeah, I mean, I think specifically, I probably took the title of this panel a little bit too literally when I was like looking for a clip, but just in terms of like lenses particularly. But I mean, there's a lot going on in terms of the aesthetic choices that were made for that film. But the reason why I wanted to show that clip was, I think, a good example of story leading a kind of technical decision that me and the director made in prep, which was we never wanted to shoot. So it's basically a movie about kind of the opioid kind of crisis, and it was really important for both of us that drug use wasn't either glamorized or also fetishized. So we just made a choice to actually never show drug use on camera, but we wanted to show the main character, Henry, the young kid, how he has a kind of almost like an idea of what drug use can be like, and he kind of almost, you know, looks at it as this thing that can be kind of like special, especially because in the story his mother just died and he's dealing with a lot of grief, and I think is turning to drugs for a moment of like respite almost. So what we wanted to do in that scene was, it was him watching someone do drugs for the first time. So we didn't want to show the Imogen, who's the character that played, or the actor that played Anna in the movie. We didn't want to show her actually doing the drugs, but we wanted to witness the aftermath of it through Henry's eyes. So the whole scene is locked off, and then for 2 shots, we shoot with a very slow pan over Imogen as she finishes doing drugs, and we shot it at like 32 frames just to make it feel slightly heightened. And then we shot, there were very few like close-ups in the movie that were longer lens, and then we shot one close-up of Henry, played by Alex Wolff, afterwards, matching the camera move, but on 50 mil that Panavision has, that's a T1, so the back, like everything just completely melts away. And that was, we got that lens and we used it for 1 shot, and that was always the plan from prep, was let's carry this T1 50 mil and we're going to use it for 1 shot. And it was just the kind of thing, when me and Joey, the director, were kind of shot listing and planning, it was just hours and hours of conversations to get to the point where it was like, oh, how can we slightly enhance Henry when he sees Anna doing drugs for the first time, because there is a sense of almost like this magical quality for him about it, because he doesn't really understand anything about it, you know. So that's again, the clip probably could have been about a minute shorter, but I thought it would give context to when those shots actually happened. So
no, I mean, that like that level of detail is incredible. I think that's probably, you know, for those who are not doing this work, you know, it's amazing to hear that you had that idea of that lens for that one moment to enhance a key element of the story, which is the detail, the level of detail you need for great art, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, we're running really quickly here because the conversation is so fascinating. We still want to show Ashley's clips, but just a note about the next generation. Are there resources out there that you would recommend that maybe even helped you, or, you know, you talked about friends, you talked about mentors. You know, a lot of people sort of say when we ask this question, we just got together with people that I trusted and who were doing great things and tried to collaborate with them. Is there a moment for any of you that you can sort of point out as something in a way that others could follow to really, you know, help them along their way in their careers?
Yeah, I happen to be a little bit different. I'm also an author as well as a cinematographer, and I've kind of spent, over the course of COVID, I spent, you know, 6 months really asking myself, what would happen if I were to pass? What would I leave as a legacy for the future? And so I wrote a book channeling all of the things that I learned along the ways to make sense of building discipline, building morale, building confidence, overcoming fear, et cetera, et cetera. The book is called The Journeyman. It's the world's first ever plantable book, where it's meant to be planted into the earth and grow like a tree, like your dreams will. So I left a link there. In there, I kind of channeled over 100 entries of things that I used and documented to allow my life to be more sufficient and proficient within the time that I spent. Aside from that, I think just spending countless hours on Vimeo Film School was probably for me, the number one thing that worked within informing my work. And then spending weekends in my off time at Bobby's house going through his book collection.
There's like, hey, do you guys all know the director Chidapong Veseratho? He did Uncle Boonmi, Who Can Recall His Past Lives. Anyways, it's funny. His advice is like, get the fuck off YouTube. Don't watch Vimeo. Go out and travel. Read a book. Go experience people. And just like which is interesting because it's like I think obviously you have to be able to hold space for both. Do you know what I mean? But it's interesting because like I mean when I was coming up, Vimeo didn't. The internet barely existed. You know what I mean? So like there was no Vimeo, there was no YouTube, there was no tutorials, there was no Instagram. You couldn't just hit people up and say, hey, can we go for a coffee? It was, I think, a little bit more kind of complicated than that. So, I mean, for me, it was just literally going to the library and like reading film books and American Cinematographer, which I think back then when I think there was maybe an idea of accessibility that felt a little bit less tangible. So it kind of created this, I don't know, this kind of like aura of something super special around what a cinematographer did,
Amazing. How about you, Ashley? Anything you could point to?
Yeah, I think for me, definitely like reading cinema books. There's so many books on cinematography, storytelling and stuff. And I think within the last like year or so, I would take like an hour every day and just kind of read a bit about that, or like look at photos or images on Shot Deck and just like break it down by just staring at it and be like, like I wonder, like, where is this like coming from, or like what's happening in this image? And then I think the other major key is like shooting outside of my jobs, because I think I would learn on my jobs in the moment, but I think when I started to shoot more outside, like just passion projects, docs, like little other things, it was training my eye to see what I actually like to see. And it just made me better. So when I was on my jobs, like my work was better. So I think like definitely just shooting a lot more outside of like paid projects, like just shooting things for fun. And just reading more cinema books on like technical things. Cause I think I was always very intuitive, like Jordan was saying earlier, like I came from like docs or like natural lighting situations. So I didn't have a lot of technical knowledge like earlier on. So I think just like reading a lot of books and learning more tech.
It's amazing. I love it. I love the idea of just getting out there. And we'll show you a clip in a second. I just wanted to just echo what you all have said. And I love, and that the director's quote that you mentioned, Bobby, I think there's something to be said there, because a lot of, I think the forcing yourself through an idea, and rather than allowing yourself to, kind of go outside. I remember even you talked about writing. A lot of the things that I've ever written in my life, whether they're scripts for shows or whether it's for school, were done while I was on a walk in my head. Like it just like, so, I mean, there's something to be said about that for sure. So maybe we could take a look at Ashley's clip. There's two clips back to back from short films, Fresh Meat and Nur and Layla.
Poor kid.
Money, 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 money all the time. Money, eat that cake and money, drink the wine. Money, 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 money for my thrills. Autumn's on the leaves together. My name in your will lie.
Allah doth guide whom he will to his light. Surah Al-Nur. The light. Damn. This mine or yours?
Nice. Ashley, did you want to add anything there before we go to maybe a question from the audience?
Well, the Nora and Layla was actually like the first narrative I've like ever done, to be honest, because I've done a lot of music videos, commercials, and stuff. So I think going into that project was pretty difficult because I felt like doing a lot of commercials, like commercial lighting, I kind of know in my head really well, but I think with narrative, I didn't really know how to approach it in terms of like lighting and emotion. And I just kind of use a lot of intuition. I even like Bobby actually also met up with me and looked at my lighting plans for Nora and Layla, which just giving me like some direction to help with that. But yeah, I think the jump from commercial to narrative it's very interesting. I guess that's pretty much all I have to say right now.
How would it work for someone who like me would not understand, but like the lenses and the gear approach between the two, like just to get a little technical for a second.
So on the first one, so Fresh Meat is essentially about a Black journalist who gets a job at this office, and essentially it's owned by these people who essentially eat Black people and steal their stories. So it's like they would have a group discussion about like, I don't know, an article or something that's happening, and then they would just disappear from the office, and the next day like they're being eaten. So that was just the opening scene from that. But I think going into it, I was trying to get lenses that were pretty fast because I knew it was going to be a darker, more like grungier type of film. And I also went super clean, no filters, nothing. We just used master primes on that one and Alexa Mini. And then on the second one, Nora and Layla, I wanted it to feel a little bit softer. I wanted to use filters, so I actually used Hollywood Black Magic 1/4 a lot on that one because I wanted it to be kind of like an elevated doc. I felt more comfortable kind of doing it that way because I have so much experience in docs. So I knew that if I leaned into my doc experience and just kind of did things that was appealing to my eye, I think that was the best way to like kind of bridge it. And I think it also lended itself to the story. But yeah, so I use master primes for both, and I just use filters on the second one.
Amazing. And I know, Jordan, we actually kind of moved on from the Porter really quickly, and I know there's a lot to be said about your approach there. Do you want to take a second to maybe mention a few things about that and approach? Maybe even if you want to be technical, that's the more the better, I think.
Yeah, I mean, technically, approaching that was very inspiring for me because it's working with darker skin tones and understanding that, you know, it was a single DP on the show, so I didn't have to split the vision that we wanted to enthrall without the show. So we wanted to take a very singular camera approach to create the language that needed to be cohesive across each episode. So staying away from my music video background by doing a lot less handheld stuff and doing a lot more fluid movement. As you watch the show, it's innately warm texturized, and it takes period 1920. So I opted to go with master built lenses on an LF sensor to enhance the skin tone softly. And with like my music videos, I often use filters for everything. And this is probably the first show I've ever shot that didn't use any filters. So everything you see is actually in camera. And we wanted to have this more psychological effect with Zeke and Junior's character as they go through these more strenuous moments. So we used a 58mm Petzl rehoused lens that we got from Sim. And what it did, similar to what the master built portrait lenses do, it knocked out the background, nothing close to a Panavision, but a lot more stylized in a way where the bokeh is a lot more distorted and really recreates the vignetting outside of the characteristics with a center frame focus. And to approach this a lot more technical, much more technical, we wanted to really block the shots outside of just putting it on a shot list. So working really closely with production design to ensure that the colors all complement each other within the frame was a very big part of our show. So I never wanted shirts to be white because all whites never really existed in 1820. The only thing that was going to be white is the color of the skin tone of the characters that were white, so they stuck out a lot more than the darker characters. You know, we wanted every window to be textured. I didn't actually have any physical lights on set. I used primarily the Cine Reflector lighting system from Lightbridge and Dito lighting system. And what we did was using big, large sources outside the windows and then bounce the natural light inside to create a much more palette-like frame inside the house. And everything kind of looks like a painting. Once you kind of watch the Porter from episode 1 to 8, you'll see a gradual growth of how things evolved in the way that the camera language is defined. And that was through, you know, shooting very unconventionally. It was really difficult to kind of know where are we going to be on Wednesday when we're shooting episode 3, and then we're going to be on Friday shooting episode 2. And then Monday, we have to come back and shoot episode 1. 76 days on course shooting with 0 breaks in between. So we're prepping in between shooting with 2 different directors, jumping between starting the day at morning to lunch, and then from lunch to the afternoon. So for me, stepping away from the personal relationships was the only way that I was able to get through this job, because I had to remove my emotions from being friends with everybody on the weekends, because I needed to prepare. I needed to really think about, oh, where does this cut from? Where does it cut to? So, employing the script supervisor and the editor on set helped my job. And it really did inform my work, because how long were setup's going to take? What were the gear requirements? I don't think a lot of DPs really speak about the amount of producing that we actually do on set. It is our job, but the amount of our job that is required of our job is a lot more than they ask for. We're really making calls in terms of, well, I do at least, because I like to be as hands-on as possible, because I want to know as much information. But I think it is very important for any cinematographers listening to this to know that your job, you are responsible for everything in front of the lens. And really and truly, it's everything behind the lens as well, because that affects what's in front of the lens.
Amazing. And I want to make sure we get that. I mean, I would never have understood that, and how much prep and how much production. And I think that's a great way of thinking about it in terms of actually producing on set while you're dealing with so many people and so many moving pieces. From the audience, we have a question about gear and how much of your personal gear you bring to shoots. And then also, as a sort of second part, do you hire local camera crew at the location, or travel when you travel with your own crew or key players?
I don't own any gear.
Yeah, I'm the same as Jordan. I have 0 interest in owning any equipment. Too much.
I own light bulbs.
Okay, yeah.
I use those on every job. I also don't like to use the same filter twice, other than glimmer glass. I don't buy filters. I think I bought one filter, a Coral #1 filter. It's the best filter in the world. Coral and chocolate are my favorite personally. And I like to work with the same gaffer and the same AC if I can, depending on the type of job. ACs I like to keep consistent if I'm doing narrative work, because we just have a language for how I like to move the camera. They are able to keep and ensure the way my OCD is for how I like my equipment to be on set. But yeah, I like to work with people as well, so I'm open.
And we have a question about apps. Are there any apps you can't live without? Anything for you, Ashley?
Well, definitely GoodNotes. Like, that's the app that I use to plan all my film stuff. And Jordan also mentioned the chat, but also Artemis. I think that's one that I use a lot on set, because you're able to go through different lenses and different cameras, and you can show the director what you're thinking instead of having to put the lens on and frame up every time. So yeah, definitely GoodNotes and Artemis are my top 2. And Q-Takes. I like to do screenshots sometimes, or I get someone to get screenshots of frames for me.
Okay. And how about
also
Bobby, Jordan?
Speaker. I do a lot of exterior daytime work, and I think just being able to influence the schedule with the AD based on where the sun is meant to be, being aware of how much it moves every 15 minutes. So if you're lighting a daytime setup, you need to know, you have to have your sun control, and it has to be a thing that's considered, because if you're working on a 4th floor building of an apartment, you need to have sun control and exterior light, or you just can't shoot when the blazing sun is coming through that window, because if the cloud comes over, it affects the consistency of your work. So ensuring, for me, Sunseeker is probably the first app that I would recommend for anyone.
Oh, dude, you got to try Helios Pro. It's like Sunseeker
Really?
on steroids. Yeah, and it's also it pairs up with Artemis too. So it's it's like $40 like Artemis, but it's I started using it last year. It's really sick.
I'll buy it right now.
Yeah, buy it right now. and then teach me how to use it, because I'm shitty at phones and computers because I'm too old. So you're just give me a tutorial when I get home.
All right, maybe one last question, but I know that I wanted to give you a chance, Jordan, to talk about hire, because it's such an important initiative, and so why don't you give us a little bit of an intro on that before we leave here?
Bobby's the greatest spokesperson of life, but I will speak to the underrepresented people on set, like myself, like Ashley. We're not represented or haven't been represented very long. So we came together to create an initiative to ensure that we would take the responsibility of allowing that to be something that we would commit most of our time to create more opportunities within the commercial industry, to bring our mentorship, to bring our expertise to the table, to mentor people that are underrepresented, I would say, within the BIPOC community. And it's also a great initiative for us to really make change for the next generation of filmmakers outside of just being BIPOC. And it's a great way for the cinematographers, directors, editors, and the people that make Up Higher to kind of work together to join resources. I think it's a very big initiative that's starting to make way and make change. We are doing workshops. We've done a couple workshops in the past, and we're looking to do some more workshops this year moving forward. But it is definitely something that we will be promoting a lot more in the next couple of weeks and months.
Incredible. I put the link there in the chat for everybody. And Bobby and Ashley, what's and Jordan, you can jump into what's coming up next for you guys, just quickly.
Well, I'm actually going to be doing a TV show next month as like BCAM for a CBC show, which I'm pretty excited about because it's union, so I guess I'm going to get some union experience. Yeah, and then after that, I have a couple of docs and music videos and stuff.
Amazing. How about you, Bobby?
I don't know. I have no idea. I just turned down my 4th feature in 3 months. I don't think I'm that interested in working right now. So, I mean, outside of like commercials a little bit, but again, I also feel like, I don't know. I think that, you know, me and Jordan have spoken a lot about this and Ashley a little bit, but I think that there's this idea that like just working yourself nonstop somehow equates to success. And I think that, you know, I just got really lucky in the last 5 years with some, you know, heavy dose of life type stuff that just made me want to slow down a little bit and actually make sure to take time for things that don't necessarily have to do with the job, you know, which I think ultimately makes you better at your job, I hope. So yeah, I don't know, just for right now, kind of kicking around the odd commercial here or there and just waiting to see if a good script happens to kind of come in and land, you know. So
nice.
I mean, I have to say that both of your answers, Ashley, I'm super excited about you being on the show, on the TV show and future music videos. And I love your answer as well, Bobby. So these are, Jordan, no pressure for you to match up with that.
I'm doing both. I have a music video next week for the only person I happen to be shooting music videos for my half of my career. And then I'm doing a TV series called Robin Hood with Director X. That's going to be on, which is it's an amazing show. Obviously it's a take on Robin Hood with a female lead character. And I won't give too many spoilers, but there might be another TV series that I will be doing backing that. And
nice.
Focusing on higher.
Love it. And yes, I'm super excited about the Robin Hood series. Thank you for being involved in that, man. I wrote to X right away and was like, yes, this is exciting stuff.
Yeah, great.
So okay, I think you know, any final thoughts before we throw back to Goldie for a final word. I you know, this has been a great panel. I think we got technical when we needed to, and we kept it sort of about the next gen as well. So thank you all for being being able to kind of move back and forth with those two spaces. Anything else to leave us with from any of you?
I would just say, if you don't ask, the answer is no.
It's a great one.
That is a great one.
Yeah, Jordan's always filled with pearls of wisdom, man. But honestly, you are though. So
make sure to check out the book if you want more of those little pearls there. All right, amazing. Well, thank you for that. And Goldie, I'm going to throw it back to you for a little outro.
Well, thank you so much to Ashley, Bobby, Jordan, and Lewis for today's conversation. And another thank you to our partners at Panavision for presenting this session.